Hey everybody, Brandon here from Couple Cosplay, and today I'm going to show you how to make Craven's Edge. The great two-handed sword wielded by Grog Strongjaw on Critical Role, which airs every Thursday night on Geek and Sundry's Twitch stream. And to all you critters out there, what happened to Craven Edge when Keela threw it through that pocket dimension?
Out and I plane shifted to the pocket dimension of the Dread Emperor.
Okay.
It's been here the whole time, and I guess that makes me the Dread Emperor. So cue that cheesy 90s music and let's get started. You want to start with drawing a pattern, which is pretty much a rough mock-up of the sword silhouette. My wife Denise used the art by Viktor Engolm to help us with that.
Is it a two-handed sword or a one-handed?
It's a great sword. It's two-handed, big old, fatty Final Fantasy VII sword.
Next, you're going to want to cut it out and pin it to some 10mm EVA foam. We used foam from TNT Cosplay Supply. Trace the paper pattern to the foam and then cut it out, this time using a nice sharp blade because we're going to have to make 3 of these to build up the denseness of the foam. Now you're going to want to support the whole sword with some PVC. We used 1/2-inch PVC and heated it up on one end to help it bend with the sword. Once you have it centered, trace the outline of your pipe and cut that out. This will be your centerpiece of your 3 cuts. Use that piece to trace on the other 2 pieces. We want these 3 pieces to encase the PVC, so we're shaving down the other 2 sides to make room for it. Use a scrap piece of PVC and wrap it in sandpaper to sand the exact form of the pipe. This was a tip I learned from Evil Ted. Thanks, Ted! Now you're going to lather up the bottom of the foam and the PVC with some contact cement. You could either use DAP or Barge. Do the same for that center and top piece. It helps if you have someone to help with the placement and squeezing all the parts together. Now that you have a foam sword on a stick, you can pack up and call it a day. Just kidding, there's a lot more work to do. Go through and cut/sand any excess pieces off and around the edges of the sword. Now you're going to need to make a pattern for your horns, which you're also going to trace to the foam, cut it out, and everything just like the first part. I used a bunch of scraps to pile 3 high to make the horns with. Now we find a piece of scrap long enough for the handle of the sword, mark it accordingly to cut it out, cover it in contact cement, and pinch the edges together. I took some sandpaper and knocked down the point where the handle meets, as well as around the whole handle. Finally, the part of foam smithing that I enjoy the most, the dremeling. This is where you go through and form the horns to make them look a little more like bone, thinning in the middle sections and leaving the knuckle-looking corners. Cut down the edges of the sword with a knife. This will make it easier to dremel. Don't worry about the knife cuts looking ratchet or anything. That's what the dremel's for. Once you're happy with your Dremel work, go through with a 2200 grit sandpaper to make a smooth finish. I did this while gluing the scrap pieces for the pommel together. Draw, cut, trace, cut, Dremel, and sand the pieces of your pommel together. Line up where you want your horns to go on the sword, cement them up, and slap them on. Now cut the eyes for Craven Edge. I played around with them a little until I was happy with how they looked, traced them, and dremeled a recess for them to go into. This will give them more dimension and make Craven a little more terrifying. After super gluing those bad boys down, I moved on to chipping away one of the horns. This will give it a more real and imperfect look. I even dremeled the inside of it to make it look a little more bony. Cut a couple of chip marks on it for a little more authenticity. I felt it needed to look a little more like a candy cane, so I wrapped it with a fabric ruler. Kidding, this is to help make the wrapped handle design. Make sure it's even and measure in between the gaps. Trace the lines so the candy cane pattern can be cut with a knife. Once you heat up these cuts, they expand to make a cool wrapped look. Go through and heat everything you've dremeled and sanded so that all those pores you opened with the foam are now closed up. Before we paint, we want to seal it up with some plasti dip. I put on about 7 coats of this stuff. While that dries, go ahead and make some threatening gestures to keep the neighbors in check. After the plasti dip is dried, then I'm going to turn it over to my lovely wife Denise of Couple Cosplay for the painting.
Hey guys, Denise here of Couple Cosplay, and I'm going to walk you through the paint process. For this project, I decided to break it up into 4 major parts to do the paint process. So we did the horns, the handle, the curved side portions of the blade, and then the major flat portion of the blade. So the thing I actually started with was the horns. Brandon had told me he wanted a dark gray to be like the dominant color for them, so I started off with a nice coat of dark gray that I'd mixed up with various black and white until I got the darkness that I wanted. And then I came back in and I highlighted with some tans, white, some light grays, and then if you do a lot of dry brush techniques, you can get the brush sideways and you can hit just the raised areas on the knuckles and on like the striations that he formed with the Dremel. And then next we did the handle, which I also use a lot of dry brush techniques. First I did a very dark brown, which you can kind of see in this area, and then I worked my way upward doing the medium tones of brown and then doing highlights in a raw sienna because it gives this nice orange look, which I feel is a nice leather look to it. And moving the brush in various crosshatch patterns and stippling. And then also if you take that highlight, which would be the raw sienna, you go along the top line of all of the straps that Brandon has carved. And then I give it more of a 3-dimensional look, adding to what he's already done. So then the third phase we did was these curved portions of the blade on the side, where I've employed using black paint, white paint, and kind of a magenta purple that I've had for a while. I played around with it a bit until I got the color that I wanted because I didn't want it to look flat. Obsidian's very dimensional, very reflective, so I came in and I made it where it would fade from a very light tone, where we almost have straight white, and fading almost to the full dark black. So we do like a 3-point process where you're doing the lighter shade, the medium shade, and the darker shade, and then blending it as you go. And with acrylic you want to do it fairly quickly, so it's good to have a bulk amount of it mixed up so you can just keep working before the paint dries. Then I would come back in with all these like little lines. Some of them are carved lines that Brandon had put in, and some are ones I just felt it needed. And so we'd go in with a dark line, and to make sure you come back with a highlight on each one. And again with the full edge contour of the blade, there's also fading different shades of purple and gray. And it may feel weird at first, but the purple is really what's going to give you more dimension. And then finally I did the flat portion of the blade, which I actually did with the highlights that we put on the edge. It was kind of done at around the same time, so I did my couple coats of black. In this case, I knew with the time constraints that we had and the weather conditions that it would all have to be done indoors in a short amount of time. So I used some semi-gloss acrylic that I already have, but you can also buy gloss medium to add to your acrylic paints. And so then made sure it touched up to keep all of our lines fairly clean around the edge of the blade, and then I came in and did the eyes finally. That was the last part, just a couple coats of red and a little highlight of kind of a pink tone that I mixed up, and then also doing the same purple highlights around the actual eyes. And for the finishing touch of detail, I had noticed in the original artwork they have this like fabric draped around the blade and handle. And for that I used some scrap cotton fabric that I had, and I soaked it in tea.
Thanks everybody for watching. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed building it.
Please be sure to like us at Couple Cosplay on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Yeah, and if you enjoyed watching the video, please give it a like. And if you do happen to build your own Craven's Edge, we definitely want to see it. We love the critter community, and we want to see Critical Role, fan art, and stuff made. So make sure you tag us in anything you guys make. We'd love to see how you guys did it yourselves.
And we intend to do more in the future. Thank you for watching, guys.